I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the Seattle Seahawks just got a very worrisome update from a Seahawks insider on multiple Seattle Seahawks free agents. Obviously, we know that there are really 4 key free agents that we've been harping on here on Seahawks Today, and the Seahawks needing to at least re-sign 2 to 3 of them. Fortunately, I don't know how close the Seahawks are going to be able to get to re-signing these players. I feel like free agency is going to get a bit uncomfortable for Seahawk fans because I'm already starting to kind of clench my fists, feel a little bit tight, feel a little bit worried about who's going to come back in Seattle. Because when you look at the salary cap and the amount of space that the Seahawks have, well, hey, Seattle should be able to re-sign and make a bunch of big moves, right? Wrong, because Seattle has made a decision that they're going to look to extend Devin Witherspoon, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And if they're both going to get paid as one of the top players in their position group, which they both should be, that doesn't mean that Seattle's going to have a ton of cap space, and then they're going to have to decide where to allocate those funds. Does it go to a running back? Does it go to a receiver, safety, cornerback? I don't envy John Schneider right now. I don't envy him at all. Obviously, he's the executive of the year in the National Football League. Obviously, he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. Obviously, he's shown that he can make a lot of really good decisions when it comes to roster and team building. That doesn't mean that every single time you're going to come in and hit a home run. I believe that Schneider and the rest of this front office in Seattle, they're going to be able to get the job done and make sure that the Seahawks have the best roster they can possibly have going forward. That being said, you're going to have to make some tough moves, and we're going to dive into at least what 4 of those potential tough moves could be in today's video. But before we do that, I need to ask you, who must the Seahawks sign in NFL free agency? It could be someone that they're re-signing, or it could be someone that the Seahawks are going to target in free agency that was signed with another team. Just remember, too, that the Seahawks have done a fantastic job of signing guys who, well, they were kind of thrown into the scrap heap, a.k.a. guys like Josh Jobe, and they turn into be big-time performers with the Seattle Seahawks. So understand that just because the Seahawks don't get a big name doesn't mean they won't have a big impact on this team. Now, let's get into the video. This is Seahawks Today. I am your host, Will Ortner, and of course, the Seahawks have some big decisions in free agency this year. What positions do they value? What players do they value? And how much are they willing to spend to keep some of those players or to go out and get some other ones? Or do the Seahawks use a lot of the draft capital that they've already created and that they've already sustained to fix some of the holes that they know that they need to fix? We're going to dive into a very interesting sit-down interview that was had on today's video. And I think that this interview really shines a light in where the Seahawks are planning to move and where they could potentially be planning to go. Now, this interview that I'm talking about, of course, came from Hawk Blogger. He does a fantastic job covering the Seahawks as well. And he had a live show where he was joined by ESPN's Brady Henderson and The Athletic's Mike Sando. And they ended up talking about some big name players that the Seahawks need to make sure that they re-sign, because there are some big free agents in Seattle that I don't think are on everyone's radar as potentially not coming back to this team. I think there's a couple of these 4 players, and look, it's going to be the 4 players that we've really been harping on here on Seahawks Today, that I think most people or some Seahawks fans think is a foregone conclusion that they're going to come back to the team. And I think after hearing what Brady Henderson had to say, I don't think that some of these guys are a foregone conclusion. Let's look at those 4 guys right now, starting with running back Kenneth Walker. Now, the running back has had a solid bout of free agency because he has earned a lot of the pub that he is getting right now. Walker obviously finished the season strong in a position where most running backs don't end up finishing the season strong. He also showed that he can be a feature back once Zach Charbonnet went down. There was a lot of discussions early on that Charbonnet could actually be the successor to Kenneth Walker, and I think that was kind of the original inclination. When you look at the yardage here and the stats for Kenneth Walker throughout his career, you can see that obviously his rookie year and this last year he had a lot of success, But as injuries piled up, he had a little bit less success in 23 and definitely a lot less success in 24. Here's what Brady Henderson had to say on the Seahawks and Kenneth Walker. They're probably going to put more stock into, and we're talking about like the durability concerns, and he was fantastically durable this season. I just think they're probably going to put more stock in the first 3 years versus what happened this season. Now, I do agree a little bit with Brady Henderson there. He basically said that Kenneth Walker re-signing in Seattle is 50-50. Are the Seahawks going to be willing to pay what he believes he is worth, or is the market going to drive up Kenneth Walker's value so much so that the Seahawks look at him and say, it's probably not going to be a viable option for us to make those payments. Right now, when you look at that transition tag, it's at $11.7 million. And that, of course, is kind of where Breece Hall is being linked at number-wise. And if Breece Hall is being linked at that number, well, then Walker's going to be right around there too. Obviously, Seattle knows that they want to do everything in their power to return Walker because, well, the backup plan and plan B, he's not going to be ready to go right away at the beginning of the season. In fact, it's more likely that he will not be ready to go until basically the midway point of the year. And that, of course, is Zach Charbonnet after he's coming off that torn ACL. Now, obviously, the stats for Charbonnet were pretty darn decent this year, but it definitely feels like Seattle only has one option when it comes to this running back position. Otherwise, you're assuming that George Holani is going to be the starter the rest of the way, or you sign in extremely cheap free agent running back and hope that they can be the 1 to the 2 with Holani, and then eventually somewhere down the road, Zach Charbonnet comes back in and adds into this team. To me, I don't think you have a great second option, so it might make sense for the Seahawks to be willing to pay Kenneth Walker what he wants. We definitely know that his price tag has significantly risen ever since his performance in the Super Bowl. You don't go from being a Super Bowl MVP to becoming a free agent and instantly say, well, I guess I should take what I would have taken a couple of months ago. That's just simply not going to happen. So I wouldn't be shocked if I saw the Seahawks end up paying a little bit more than they might normally be comfortable with just so they can keep Kenneth Walker in Seattle. Something that isn't going to cost more than what you are comfortable with is our St. Patrick's Day merch. You can go and grab our fantastic Seattle Drinking Team t-shirts today. Look at how cool that design is. Recently established. We have a couple inaugural members. You're going to want to make sure that you're a part of that. It's, of course, going to be for St. Patrick's Day, where you need to be wearing green so that way you don't get pinched. Super affordable as well. Only $29.99. Go pick one up for yourself today. Super easy to find. All you got to do is look in the comment section and description of today's video, and you can look and you can just click on that link. It'll take you right where you need to go. And just like that, you'll be able to pick up a t-shirt for yourself. So make sure that you go and do that. Go grab your St. Patrick's Day merch today. The next big name free agent that we need to talk about, and we're going to stay on the offensive side of the football for the Seahawks, is Rashid Shaheed. Now, this is where it gets very interesting because with Shaheed as a wide receiver, it might be easier in most situations for the Seahawks to move on from him if he was already on the team, already on the roster. The problem, you traded up and you traded 2 draft picks away, your 4th and 5th rounders in this year's draft to go and get him. And so it does feel like the Seahawks might have a stronger inclination to make sure that they hold onto him. Henderson said that he was at about a 6.5 out of 10 that Rashid Shaheed ends up re-signing in Seattle. And to me, that does make a lot of sense, but don't be shocked with the success that Shaheed had on the special teams side of the football that his price tag goes up as well. When we look at the stat line for Shaheed, obviously the Seahawks did not do a fantastic job of utilizing him as a wide receiver, at least not the way that the New Orleans Saints did. Now, some of that, too, is the Saints were feeding Shaheed more so that his trade value went up. Also, some of that is because, well, Shaheed wasn't the number 1 option in Seattle, so he was having to learn the system while also developing that chemistry with Darnold while also being, well, the 3rd or 4th option. I believe that Shaheed is going to get a bag this offseason. You don't go from winning a Super Bowl and being a clear big part of that Super Bowl win to being someone that just gets kind of thrown to the side. When you have an elite speedster like Shaheed, it's easy for a lot of teams to overvalue a player like him. Just remember, I know that this is almost 2 decades ago now, but the Las Vegas Raiders, back when they were the Oakland Raiders, took Darius Hayward-Bay just because he ran like a 4.3 40. So there are going to be teams that value speed because, well, you can't coach it, and Rashid Shaheed, he's the fastest of all of the people. So don't be shocked if he ends up getting a bag and there's a team that overpays for him. And if there's a team that's going to overpay for him, I don't know that it's the Seattle Seahawks. Make sure you subscribe to Seahawks Today for more news, content, and information on your favorite team. 12s, we are going to have you covered on the latest news and rumors on the Seattle Seahawks, so make sure that you hit that sub button if you haven't already. Next free agent that we need to talk about as we dive over to the defensive side of the ball is safety Coby Bryant, and he's a player that I am a bit surprised at where the conversations are sitting at right now when it comes to his contract negotiations. I felt like Coby Bryant was someone that was going to come in and be 9 out of 10, super easy, plug and play. He's going to be with us for quite some time. Doesn't sound like my original inclination is correct on that. In fact, it sounds like Coby Bryant and the Seahawks are miles apart right now when it comes to will he or will he not re-sign with the Seahawks. Brady Henderson had this to say, and I think it's an important quote that we make sure we get here. More than double the average per year, that was the difference. So essentially, and I'm making up numbers here, this isn't a real number. Coby Bryant is saying, I'm worth $100 million a year, and the Seahawks are saying you're worth $50 million a year. Obviously, those aren't the real numbers, but it is just an easy big number way of saying the Seahawks think Coby Bryant is overvaluing himself, and Coby Bryant thinks the Seahawks are undervaluing him. I find this worrisome because I would love for Coby Bryant to come back to Seattle. I thought that he had a fantastic season this year, and I thought that he really stepped up into becoming a leader on this team. Now, one of the reasons why the Seahawks might be lowering the price tag for a guy like Coby Bryant is because of the play of Ty Okada. Now, obviously, at the beginning of the year, Okada really struggled and was a liability, honestly, at times. But you know what he did? He practiced. He continued to improve, and by the end of the year, he was a clear big proponent of this defense, and he was a great addition to this team. He had to play a lot because of Julian Love. He had to play a lot because of Coby Bryant, both those guys getting hurt. Now Seattle's in a tough position where do they not pay a guy like Coby Bryant, who's shown that he can have success as a starter, for a player like a Ty Okada, who has shown that he can have success, but we don't know if he's going to be able to replicate the success that he had this year as a full-time starter once teams get more tape on him. Now, don't get me wrong. I am the type of person who says I want all the good players on my team. Sorry for saying that I want to live life on easy mode. But I don't know if there is a world where the Seahawks are going to be able to keep Coby Bryant, and they might put their price tag at a much lower spot because of how well Ty Okada played this season. In fact, the more and more that I think about it, more and more I don't know that Coby Bryant's going to be in Seattle, and it's going to be because of how well Ty Okada played. Which player do the Seahawks need to re-sign most? Let me know down below in the comment section. NFL free agency is right around the corner. March 11th is when free agency starts and the new NFL season begins. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, after you subscribe to the channel, sound off in the comment section. Make sure your opinion is heard. Make sure your opinion's heard on this question. Last player that we got to talk about is cornerback Riq Woolen, and I do think that this might be the easiest conversation to have around a player because I've been honest and I've said that I want Riq Woolen to stay in Seattle, but based off of his clips and the things that he has said, not only to me, but to other media members, and as well as what he said to Brady Henderson, it definitely feels like he is on the way out. Brady Henderson had this to say on Riq Woolen. He's got enough talent and enough really high-end football on his resume to where it would not surprise me if he gets a deal somewhere north of $15 million per year, and I just don't see the Seahawks paying that. I completely agree with Henderson. When you're looking at some of the contract projections for a player like Devin Witherspoon, who also plays cornerback, it doesn't make sense to pay both of those corners a high monetary value, or the monetary value that both of them think that they deserve. When I look at this roster, when I look at this team, to me, Riq Woolen has put himself in a position to where he is going to get paid top dollar in free agency, and I don't think that the Seahawks can afford to pay him that. And I don't always necessarily know that the Seahawks need to pay him that. When we look at the last 4 years for Woolen, obviously he's a good player. Obviously he is a good starter. Obviously he is the type of player that I would love to have back in Seattle. But when you couple in the fact that he just was on a Super Bowl winning team, when you couple in the fact of his athleticism, his speed, his range, his ability to play different teams, and his ability to play man coverage, I think that Seattle is going to get outbid for Riq Woolen. I think that someone is going to come in and pay Riq Woolen an absurd amount of money. He might be the type of player and the person this year that we say, wow, Riq Woolen got the biggest contract for what he has shown on the field this offseason. It happened in the past when the Miami Dolphins gave an absolute bag to Jordan Brooks. I think that Riq Woolen is clearly in the position to be that guy this year. And frankly, he deserves it. So good for him. But if you're going to go where the most money is going to be given to you, it's not going to be in Seattle. When we look at the salary cap projections, it's important to note that Jackson Smith-Njigba and Devin Witherspoon are both expected to be extended this season with the Seattle Seahawks, and that is why you're going to see the Seahawks end up losing out on a couple of these other big-time players in free agency. When you're paying a guy like Devin Witherspoon $124 million and you're paying a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba $152 million throughout the lifetime of their contract, well, that gives it a high average annual value, and that makes it almost impossible to bring everyone back. Unfortunately, the Seahawks can't pay everyone. I wish that this was the MLB and salary cap was not a thing and you could just throw around bags of cash all over the place. But unfortunately, the Seahawks are going to have to make some tough decisions. It sounds like they're going to have to make more tough decisions than we had originally thought. If you're a diehard Seahawks fan, hit that thumbs up button. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. We always appreciate it when you hit that like button because, well, it just makes us feel so darn good inside. Make sure that you subscribe as well. It's Combine Week. We are going to have a ton of NFL Combine content that you don't want to miss out on. The best way to not miss it is by hitting that sub button and turning on your notifications. Thank you so much for viewing today's video, and I'll catch you guys next time.